Speak to Jamie Jenkins now, who is a former health analyst at the Office for National Statistics. Hello, Jamie.
Hi, mate.
One of the things that we're grappling with here is the quarantine and the isolation bit. Let's start there. Front pages of a couple of the newspapers today, Saturday, have hinted that quarantining could be relaxed for those who've been double jabbed, and that there could be a change to some of the isolation rules, particularly around schools. You've been across the data on this, Jamie, for a while. What's your hunch?
Yeah, I think that what we're seeing basically is this third wave that everybody's talking about, this massive rise in cases we've seen over the last month or so. It started in the northwest, but predominantly I've been crunching all the numbers every day, and it's predominantly among younger people. And it's not just the kind of 20 to 24-year-olds. We're seeing a big rise in cases in the people in school, etc. And I think what we're really seeing is this kind of rise in cases among younger people, but it's not really kind of leading to older people getting into the virus as well. So all this talk about kind of this third wave, and we're not seeing the same link as we've seen in the past between rising cases and the same equivalent with rising hospitalizations and deaths. And deaths are still relatively low at the moment. So I think there's the break with the vaccine between the rising cases and then deaths, hospitalizations, etc. That's positive news, what we're seeing at the moment.
It is positive news. And I hate to be I don't want to be the person that sprays the negativity over this story, Jamie, but the other conversation is around, on the one hand, the production of variants that the spread of the virus contributes to, but also the weight on the infrastructure with lots of people ill at any one time, right? And I suppose the thing that ministers and health officials in Downing Street are going to be weighing up are stories like a school that my girlfriend Michaela was telling me about back where she's from in Blackpool, where they have to close, not because there's been a couple of cases and bubbles have had to sort of isolate, but because too many teachers have got the virus and are not well enough to teach, and so they've had to close the school down. And I suppose that's the juggling act that we're in at the moment, Jamie, isn't it? When we talk about quarantine and isolation and stopping the spread of this virus, it's more than hospitalizations and deaths.
No, definitely. Obviously, if teachers are off ill, you've got to look after the teachers. They've got to be the first and foremost. But I suppose what you've got to balance here, Daryl, is the risk between people are getting frustrated with the lockdowns now and how long they've been in place, etc. So when you think about what's been going on, if we best time to unlock the country is probably during the summer months when people can mix outdoors more, where we know respiratory viruses aren't as kind of prevalent as what they would be in the winter. So if we go in towards kind of the third wave and we're going to say peak up in towards September, October, November time, best time to unlock is probably this time of the year, basically, when you're looking at the data, because if you go into those winter months, we know that we probably might get another strain of the flu that kicks in. So I think you've got to get that balance between, should we allow the kind of the public to take their own risk versus the government saying you can't do things. So that's the big thing that's going to be weighing up between the doctors saying, should we continue with some restrictions, and the government saying we're going to unlock completely.
Okay, where do you think, because I mean, risk as well, and listen, you're across the data more than I am, so I will always defer to you, Jamie, on these kind of things. But I suppose one of the issues around risk is that with the spread of a virus, we are calculating other people's risk as well. We're calculating risk to infrastructure. We're calculating risk to to various things beyond just ourselves. My suggestion, Jamie, of us being able to hang on to some of these measures, to be able to do the bits that are not as restrictive, the bits that don't impact our lives quite as badly as pure isolation does, and still allow some other things to unlock. Is there a happy medium that the sort of heat of the debate often misses?
Well, I think one thing we've got to remember is that even with the hospitality has reopened in recent months, and we still got a large significant people on furlough, and that's going to start tapering off over the next couple of months. And I think the camp that I'm kind of in now is that with double jabs, most people now, we've got most of the population have been double jabbed. The most vulnerable people have been double jabbed about several months ago. And remember now, with the flu vaccine, we don't vaccinate every single person with regards to all of that. So I think the happy medium would be that if you open up the economy and allow people to do more and more things, remember that doesn't mean that everybody has to do those things. So people can, if people generally want to continue to wear masks, continue to stay away from venues, not go to theatres, etc., that's a personal choice they're going to have. And I live in Wales, actually, where there's been no date, like Boris Johnson has said in England, where there's going to be complete unlocking of the country. And the health minister in Wales is starting to talk a little bit about passing that risk back to the public. And that's a big debate we're going to start needing to have, Daryl, is that at what point do we pass the risk of life back to the public rather than government? Because ultimately the virus isn't going to go away, and we've got to learn to live with it and learn to live with the level of risk that that's going to pose. And inevitably we're going to see more deaths. At the moment, if you look at actually the data, we're seeing 10 times more deaths linked to flu and pneumonia than we are with COVID. COVID deaths are relatively low at the moment. We are seeing deaths daily, every day published, and they're announced on the television, etc. But they are at relatively low levels, which is obviously positive. But every death is tragic. We don't want people dying unnecessarily. So I get
that. No, it's a fair point, Jamie. It's a fair point. And I wonder if my issue with the individual risk thing is that, for me, and this will be, I speak on behalf of many. I'm not a virologist. I'm not a trained expert in what viruses do and how to calculate risk. And so it is hard for me to calculate what the risk is to me and my community and my family and my workplace and the infrastructure around me of me going to a theatre. And that's why we defer, though, isn't it? We defer to experts and those ministers who are constantly trying to listen to experts, strip out all the politics, strip out all the noise. The reality is they know better than I do.
No, that's a very fair point, Daryl. But I think what's important to remember now, compared to, say, this time last year and this time back in even November time, is the vaccine. And that was really the game changer. So when I led the team at the Office for National Statistics, I used to produce all the death statistics on how many people would die each year from various different causes. And flu was one of the major ones. And in 2018, we saw a massive rise in flu deaths because, ironically, we talk a lot about variants with the COVID vaccine. There was a mutant strain of the flu in 2018, and it was quite deadly towards the elderly. Now, that's a level of risk that we're having to live with flu every year, and it's going to be a level of risk that we're going to have to live with COVID. Now, I think in this instance, you can defer back to the kind of the vaccine companies. Even Chris Whitty himself is saying that we need to learn to live with the virus. And the positive thing is that all the data is showing that these vaccines are stopping people getting seriously ill. If you track, and this is why I do on my Twitter profile every day, if you track the number of cases that's going up and the number of deaths that are happening, we're not seeing what we saw in the past. So there's definitely a clear break between the vaccine. And I suppose the question has to be, if you're going to vaccinate the majority of the population, and remember that there's a large part of the population who's had cases as well, if you're going to vaccinate people, you've got to get a benefit from all of that as well. So I think that's the key difference between this time and this time last year.
Okay, can you, Jamie, if we're going to try and find this happy medium, and I want you to sort of advise Boris Johnson and Sajid Javid tonight. They've got the Doctors' Union on the one hand saying, listen, we need to hang on to some things, and they've got the data on the other hand telling them, whatever else, and they have to make a decision here on what to keep and what to ditch. And they want to keep some stuff because they want to try to thwart the spread of the virus, but equally they want to offer the freedoms that are proportionate to where we're up to. What would you feel comfortable hanging on to?
So I think this is probably where Boris Johnson's made a little bit of a mistake, actually, because he announced many, many months ago, Daryl, that he's going to just Freedom Day in June. Obviously, that's been postponed. We're going to get rid of everything. And they kind of haven't gone to the point now where they've kind of taken away masks. Maybe they should have taken away masks in June and see the effect of all of that. So I think the difficulty for Boris Johnson is he's promised this, getting rid of everything. And what would be an interesting experiment, because I think Nicola Sturgeon's talked about doing the similar thing in August in Scotland. Mark Drakeford in Wales hasn't talked about a similar thing there. So it could be interesting to see if Boris does decide to go for this blanket approach. And I say the summer's the best time to do it. We will see the effect in England. And if there's no difference between the data in England and Wales, it's probably turned out to be a good thing. I think what needs to be there is, as I've already said, is it comes back to that risk and passing it back to the public in regards to you. If Boris Johnson says theatres are going to be open, we're going to start opening nightclubs, you don't have to go to visit these things. If you remember, people have been kind of told over the last year that things have been really bad. The fear that's been caused by the pandemic is still there. We know that the majority of people support restrictions. So allowing people to continue to go about their daily lives is probably a positive thing. But I don't think, Daryl, that even if on July the 19th, the whole country is unlocked completely in, say, England, I don't think on July the 20th you're going to see that.
Yeah.
The majority of people are going to continue to carry on probably wearing masks
So
continue to kind of...
Yeah, so there's a bit of behavioural psychology going on there, that we can perhaps satisfy those who want to ease the restrictions while also still having that amber light on for people who perhaps would choose to step out for a bit longer. I suppose that what's the flashing amber light? Go if it's safe, right? That's perhaps what we're talking about here, isn't it? That in between. Listen, Jamie, we're out of time, but nice to talk to you. Nice to